Hi, everybody. Thanks for sticking around. It is always nice. See if I can pull this window over here. Not like that. Oh, come on, Windows. There, that's good. Okay. I didn't look at any of these questions, sorry. Where's... There it is. Okay. Like I said, guys, thank you for indulging me. I'm so excited to share this game with you, and I'm conscious that I am over explaining it, but I think that's just how I'm gonna have to go for the beginning part, because I've spent so many hours of my life thinking about this game and these systems and the way that they fit together, and it's so unlike any other game that I've ever played. And I mean, clearly in the way that a lot of games of its era are clear ancestors of modern games. I mean, you look at King's Quest and especially like Monkey Island, and you can see how modern adventure games are sort of like built off of that. You look at a game like this, and you can see how modern Western RPGs are really like built off of this. And in some ways, it's because they share a common root in tabletop role playing and wargaming. Because this game was kind of a big deal in 1993, but it was not the same kind of a classic that Monkey Island or King's Quest was, or Myst. Like, those are all bigger games that had bigger impact and bigger legacy than Betrayal at Krondor. Not a lot of people remember this game, comparatively at least, but I think that it marks a moment in history that is really significant in the development, both technologically and ideologically, of games, especially of games of this type of computer RPGs. And it was hugely influential on me, and I think probably ultimately formed a lot of my taste for the kinds of games that I like. And I wouldn't say that Betrayal at Krondor is the model for my perfect game. Far from it. But it does reflect a lot of the things that appeal to me, that still sort of call to me, that are engaging and fun, and that I enjoy doing in games today. So, yeah, it's an interesting one. In your opinion, how does the decision to put all of the text in past tense change the experience of playing the game? The only other game I've seen give this type of narration in the past tense is the Stanley Parable. Oh, that's an interesting comparison. So, I said the word literary at the beginning, and that's not the right word, but I'm going to use it again because I'm not sure how else to describe it. This game does not hide from the fact that it is a licensed property, and that it is licensed from a series of dense high fantasy novels. And so a lot of the text of this game is written to evoke the experience of reading those texts. Hence, I think the past tense and the flowery purple language, and frankly the density and length of the content. All of that is recalling the sort of explicit origins of this. Nobody picked up this game, I don't think. Well, I mean, that's not fair. I may have picked up this game without really knowing what it was about or where it came from, but nobody plays this game without quickly becoming familiar with what it's about. That it is not a standalone piece. The Stanley Parable, I think, uses the same technique to achieve the same effect for a different purpose. So this game is trying to evoke the sense of reading a novel, which I think is meant to bring the audience closer to the experience, to capture some of the imaginative, empathic qualities of reading a book. And visualizing the scene that is presented to you in a novel, and therefore bring you closer to the story. In the Stanley Parable, I think that it's similarly trying to evoke a novelistic experience, but at a time, in a format, in a culture that it is very savvy to how that experience is actually going to be distancing to a video game player, which isn't to say that it's not distancing in Betrayal at Krondor. And I would actually be really curious, for those of you who never played this game and have never seen a game quite like this, interrogate yourself about how those text passages make you feel. Does it make you feel separated from the game, or does it make you feel connected to the game in a way? I will say that for me, again, colored strongly by the nostalgia that I have for this game, remembering playing it at 11 years old as an avid reader and a neophyte to computer games, I think that it achieved what it was trying to do of making this feel like an interactive novel, like I was playing part of an epic fantasy saga. Whereas today's audience, I think, is not going to have that same reaction, especially an older or more savvy audience. And that's what Stanley Parable understands, and that's how it deploys this same technique. It knows that kind of narration, that tense is going in that style, right? That sort of narrative style is gonna separate people from the game. It's gonna distance people from the game. It's gonna be sort of disconcerting and discontinuous. That's a really super interesting connection to make. Thank you. Right, and then the stream went down. Everybody panicked. Terrible. Eve called me on the telephone. Thank you. Okay, since you usually point out the enjoyable and unenjoyable parts of games on Mostly Walking, what makes some games unique compared to others? Is there something this game does that stands out in particular and sets it apart, good or bad? Does it feel pretty run-of-the-mill for the genre? So I would... Oh, this is a great question. I love it. Okay, so answer to this question is a little bit complicated because it's in two parts. Basically, what we have seen here, what we've seen today and experienced today, is pretty par for the course for the genre, right? There's nothing revolutionary that we saw. There's a lot of killing mobs, gathering loot, selling loot, upgrading your weapons, leveling your characters, thinking about how you want to level those characters, leveraging the sort of narrative and the intrinsic, the starting place. It's got a pretty tight system, but it's the kind of system, the kind of mechanisms that you would expect to see at least in a Western RPG, and frankly a lot of them in any RPG. At the time that this game came out, in 1993, a lot of these were revolutionary systems. Maybe not for the first time ever, but certainly, they weren't commonplace. Remember 1993, like the field of games that we're looking at are, Monkey Island, King's Quest, Quest for Glory, adventure games. Quest for Glory is by far the closest thing that comes to this. Quest for Glory and like Zork or Adventure are games that come closest to Betrayal at Krondor. And then Myst or something like that. So we've got games that surpass this in terms of technical prowess, in terms of graphics, and in terms of usability and approachability, of accessibility. Absolutely. I mean, most games probably. A lot of games, though, are definitely like superior to this on those fronts. This game tells a story that is independently interesting and well written. Frankly, I think Myst has the best claim on that, and I would argue this story is technically superior to Myst in pretty much every way. Adventure games are light in terms of their writing, and something like Monkey Island is pretty good. Grim Fandango has a lot of really good writing in it, although those games have problems that we've seen on Mostly Walking, where the writing gets in the way of the experience of the game, of actually playing the game. And this doesn't have that problem. This has like really solid writing, really solid dialogue, really solid overall story, and it succeeds at integrating that story into the game in a way that is more or less unprecedented at the time. In the way that, for example, and again, we haven't seen a ton of this, but like we will. The Squire Phillips character is somebody that we run into at the very beginning, and he just tells us some basic world building information. If we go far enough, if we go to a certain town and talk to a certain person, we'll find out something that is interesting, that then if we go all the way back and talk to Squire Phillips again, he'll have more, he's involved in some sort of an intriguing plot that we'll have to sort of like unravel and uncover. And that whole sort of side narrative is tightly embedded in the world that's been created, but it is entirely optional. It's not a part of the main storyline. And it doesn't, I mean, it's actually it's well done even by today's standards. It's a side quest, but it's a side quest that is like pretty subtly, cleverly enfolded into the world. In the way that, only the best side quests in modern RPGs are. So again, it's not unique to today's audience, but it is sort of stunningly revelatory for the time period that it came out in. Okay, and then, so that's part of it. Part of it is contextual. This game was unique. Today, the ideas that it innovated on and presented as sort of new or interesting have become run-of-the-mill. That said, there's actually a bunch of stuff that this game does that I mean, again, I guess it's not unique. It still feels different to me. It's the kind of stuff that like you can go into Fallout 4 and very quickly abandon the main storyline and just do other shit. And there's theoretically like a main story that you're supposed to to be keeping track of and progressing, but you can put that off indefinitely because there is other stuff to do in the world. And this game has that in spades. The way that I play... So, the intended experience of this game, more or less, is that you go from where you were in the sort of northwestern part of the kingdom, or the like midwestern, I guess, part of the kingdom, around Lamut, down through one of those southern roads to Krondor, and then there's a little bit of stuff that you have to do in Krondor. But that's like the intended scope of the first chapter. I rarely played beyond the first chapter as a child. Like I like played all the way through the game maybe once, but mostly most of my time I just spent in the first chapter exploring all of the rest of the world, and leveling my characters up like incredibly strong. And this is one of the things that I think is different, that's unique to this game, that is smoothed out. It's a rough edge that is smoothed out in modern RPGs, where there is a sense, there's some consideration to the way that the leveling systems interact with the larger narrative structure of the game. That either in sort of in a way that like there's a certain amount that you're supposed to do before the like some narrative milestone, that you can't do too much more than that, or it caps you at the amount of experience that you can get up to that point, or or that it actually adjusts the way that the narrative flows based on how you tackle those kinds of things. This game doesn't have any of that sophistication. And one of my favorite things about this game is that Owen is like this peasant healer, sort of mage, like very low level mage. I mean, mostly he's just like a peasant healer, right? He knows enough to set broken bones and prevent infection magically. Later, in a couple of chapters, you take charge of a master wizard. And it is absolutely true that the Master Wizard is much more powerful than Owen was at the start of the game. But the way that I played this game, by the time I got through Chapter 1, Owen was leagues and leagues above the Master Wizard in terms of like his ability and power and spells and the number of spells that he knew. And so you take on this Master Wizard in this sort of amazingly discordant moment where the narrative suggests to you that you've gotten sort of a powerful figure has joined your party, and it is incredible handicap to you because you lose Owen, who you have spent a lot of time and energy leveling, or at least I have, and take on this other mage who doesn't have the same abilities, and is actually like pretty severely handicapped depending on how you play it, because you may have burned some single-use items that exist in the world that now you can't access a second time to help level up this second character. Specifically, some of the spell books, like you can only find spell books, like one copy of a spell book. So Owen can get that spell, or can't remember his name. It starts with a P. The Master Wizard can get the spell, but both of them can't have it. Anyway, that I think is unique, and that's not necessarily a feature, but again, it's, I mean, 1993, so 25 years. This game is 25 years old. The like lessons that we learned in this game, the things that worked well, we've had 25 years to figure out how to incorporate those into all kinds of games to make those mainstream. What's remarkable about this game is how similar it looks on some fundamental levels to modern Western RPGs. I mean, visually, and actually, like, in terms of the interface, it's quite different because it's dealing with a lot of technical limitations that we no longer have to worry about. It was also, like, very primitive in terms of user experience and UI. But in terms of, like, systems and storytelling, it's incredible how modern it seems, how run-of-the-mill this sort of appears. Because... this is you know, games have had 25 years now to iterate on these concepts, to improve them, and yeah, it has integrated them. Our industry, games in general, have integrated a lot of these concepts very, very well, and ubiquitously, but they haven't improved on them so much that the concepts seem horribly outdated. I mean, some of them do. Some of them certainly do. But, you know, I could see, like, an HD remake. It would have to be, like, technically pretty drastically remastered. But a modern, updated version of this game that retained all of the same underlying systems, the exact same narrative, and most of the UI, I think would do reasonably well. Okay, yeah, right. This may have come up before, but how do you feel about this game or others, obscuring most of the details regarding stats and effectiveness of items, experience being gained, etc.? This is a tough question because it's really contextual for me. It's very subjective. I think that's an aesthetic. And I think that it is a dangerous aesthetic that is not to be deployed lightly. It is tempting as a game designer. I mean, believe me, as somebody who designs games on occasion and who also teaches novice game designers, I am extremely familiar with how easy it is to fall into the trap of over-designing systems and under-explaining them. And, you know, a certain amount of that can work. Especially dependent on your game and your theme and a number of other factors. But most of the time you do it because it's just a lot easier than like fixing your game. So it's an aesthetic, and it can be used deliberately and it can be used effectively. And a lot of the time when it is used, it is neither of those things. This game, I have a lot of forgiveness towards because of the nostalgia, again, that I have for it. But I recognize that part of my instinct to over-explain this game on stream, is at least in this first round of play of it, is because it doesn't do a particularly good job of explaining itself. And I don't think that particularly helps this game. Like, if I understood more about how this game works, I don't think that would lessen my experience. I think it would probably deepen it. Because I spent a lot of time as a young person developing that understanding, right? Reading the 88-page manual and exploring the systems and trying things over and over again, seeing how they worked. and if how they worked was better explained. But again, I mean, so again, this game specifically comes from an era where shipping a game with an 88 that came on a single CD with an 88-page manual was not uncommon. Like that was standard. That's how you did things. And the expectation that people would read the manual, I mean, you know, this is coming out of a genre of games that were nothing but a manual. You would get a player's handbook, and the entire game experience was like reading the player's handbook so that you could play the game with no other materials, right? It was just talking with your friends with dice. So the idea that like before you sat down to play a game or while you were playing a game, you would read supplementary material that would explain the systems that were at play. And because this is a computer game, it's frankly automating those systems way more than an RPG, a tabletop RPG would do. That's sort of the environment that this game comes out of. So again, I think that like some of those sins are forgivable given the context, given the history of this game. That said, you know, it still creates an aesthetic, and it's still something that's done to this day, and sometimes it works. And like, it's now morphed into a secondary like tier of that. If you look at a game like Minecraft drives me fucking crazy, like just totally nuts, because it's such a good game. It's such a good game if you play it with the Minecraft wiki open at the same time. And the experience that I guess some people really enjoy of playing that game and just discovering all of the things that are possible in it is one that doesn't appeal to me at all. And, you know, wouldn't that game be so much better in some way if I didn't have to have a web page open while I was playing it, if instead that information was integrated into the game. But at the same time, I can't deny that forcing people to go out and actually, I mean, like what Minecraft.wikia or MineWiki or whatever the like big one is, that's not Mojang's. Like, they didn't create that. They don't maintain it. That's a community website. This design decision in their game has spurred a community to form around actually recording what is in the game and spreading that knowledge to new players. In addition to that, like there's another benefit of when I have been in the past deep into like Minecraft, like I would spend time when I was not playing the game researching things about how the systems worked, thinking about the game, playing the game in my head. Basically, that game was able to take up more mind share, more of my attention, more of my consciousness than I could actually like sit down and play it, which is tremendous. I mean, that's really like an incredible achievement that is based on a design decision that I personally find like really kind of frustrating. But I can't deny the positive effect that it has on the game from a larger scale, thinking about it in a larger context. So that's something too. It's always an aesthetic. I am always going to prefer games that are neatly encapsulated, but that's certainly not required for a game to be successful or good. Okay, I'm spending a lot of time answering these questions, so I'm only going to answer a few. There's only a couple more anyway. Why do you think you got into this game so much as a kid without any knowledge of the lore it's based on, facing poorly tutorialized mechanics and UI elements? I think some of it is the scope of it. So, again, I can't stress enough how fascinating, how intriguing the idea of a well-executed open world was at the time. And that's something that is not hard to find anymore. But for me, this game was something really and truly unlike anything that I'd ever seen before. So for me, I think a large part of what is, or certainly was, compelling about this game is the way that it integrates mechanics that are well balanced, well designed, have, I think, an appropriate, like a really compelling degree of complexity, with a narrative that is well written, well executed, and tightly integrated into the game as a whole. And those are things that, you know, for me at 11 years old were really hard to find. And so this game, you know, kind of opened my mind to a whole different scale of what procedural storytelling and sort of, you know, digitally automated what is really now gameplay, what you could do with a game, what a game could, the kind of experience that a game could create. And yeah, you put this game up against Skyrim or Fallout or Dragon Age, and it pales in comparison. But in a world that didn't have any of those, this was really incredible. This represented to me, I think, a technical and design achievement at the time, something, you know, unprecedented in my experience, and also something that was inspirational. That you know, most of the games that I played up until that point were like side-scrolling platformers, were at the highest level of quality Super Mario Brothers 3. But this game, compared to Super Mario Brothers 3, does things, I mean, it breaks the world open in ways that are hard to even imagine if that's your landscape. And maybe the pinnacle of gaming for me at that time was Link to the Past, which I'd be curious to know how many younger gamers have actually played Link to the Past. You know, I consider it sort of a classic. I think of it as something that probably a lot of people have played, but I don't know if that's true. And that game is wonderful. Like, I love that game. I've got stories about that game. But in terms of, like, actually storytelling, and in terms of actually opening the world, like, it presents a world that is pretty big and explorable. But compared to Krondor, compared to Midkemia, it's tiny and linear. It's like incredibly linear. This is orders of magnitude, sort of bigger in scale and scope and ambition. And for me, that was just incredible. And I had a lot of time. You know, I was 11 years old. I didn't, in the summer at 11, I had like nothing to do. and I'd stay up till 6 a.m. watching reruns of Next Generation and playing Betrayal at Krondor and brute forcing word locks, and then sleep till noon. That's a lifestyle that I couldn't afford to have anymore. So if this game were introduced to me in that way today, like I wouldn't have the patience for it, but I did then. Which is also probably why Minecraft is like such a big hit, because 11-year-olds have time and patience that I don't have. They don't value the encapsulation and the smoothness of experience of a game as much as they value sort of the sense of depth and exploration. And I mean, frankly, Minecraft, I think, offers them, or at least 5 years ago did, offered them the same kind of eye-opening, inspirational experience that this game offered me when I was young. Okay, one of the biggest pitfalls of modern open-world RPGs in my experience is scaling. It's easy for the player to do too much side content and get too powerful, trivialize the main content, or skip too much at the end and end up underpowered. According to your memory, how well does Betrayal at Krondor handle this, considering how much freedom you have to go the long way versus taking shortcuts? And yeah, we'll compare this now and later. But I will tell you, it has some unconventional ways of attempting to handle this, and mostly this is super broken, right? So this is one of the biggest problems that modern open world RPGs have, and we've been working on it for 25 years. So Betrayal at Krondor, has some elegant, but generally extremely simplistic ideas about how that's going to work. And it is very fallible. So, I think the biggest way that it handles it is that it assumes sort of a margin of error, that like this is what it expects you to do, and it has been tuned to be reasonable within a certain margin of that. But it is possible and actually like pretty easy, and I would argue potentially really tempting to play the game in a way that breaks that horrifically, and with some humorous, interesting, unusual consequences sometimes, like the example of the Master Wizard who feels incredibly underpowered compared to your character that you leveled up earlier. Okay, I think I'm gonna do this. I think I'm gonna do a play-by-play on Thursday this week. That's my plan. I'll do a show until then. I'm gonna call this tonight. If I like I said, currently my plan is to do a show on Thursday. I think that should be fine. I'll stick with that. There won't be a show next week. Well, maybe on Monday. If things are going really well, it sounds like there's no Mostly Walking next Monday, so I might do another of these on Monday. But next week I'm giving a job talk, and then a week and a half after that I'm giving my GDC lecture, and neither of those are 100% what you would call done, like ready. So I need to work on them between now and then there definitely won't be a play-by-play on Thursday of next week, because that's the night before my interview and lecture and whatnot, so I want to sleep instead. But yeah, I'll let you know. I'll be on Twitter if for some reason I can't do this Thursday. I am planning to come back and play more Betrayal at Krondor on Thursday. As we go through this game, my explanation or my like casual talk over the game is I expect going to become less explanatory and more analytical as we like. There was a lot this time of just like, oh yeah, this thing I remember, here's how it works. But we're gonna, I think, now quickly get out of that and into like, okay, so now we understand how all of these systems work. Let's see what the game is doing narratively, how it's employing systems to create different kinds of reward loops, which I think it does well in a like Diablo-esque kind of a style, at least the way that I've played it. And to create like the amount of optional content that there is and how compelling a lot of that is. So I think we'll talk more about that starting next time. Cool. Thanks, guys. Have a great night. Have a great week. See you later. I hope that this was entertaining in the absence of Sean and Bill. And I saw that Bill was in the chat a little bit earlier, so I'm glad that he was able to stop by. But thank you all for being here, for being part of this community. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I hope you had fun. Have a great night. Bye.